Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into Docker Compose.
Oh, yeah, Docker Compose. I love Docker Compose.
It seems like a lot of you are starting to run side projects on VPSs
Yeah,
and are looking for an easy way to deploy.
for sure.
And Docker Compose seems like a great option for that.
Definitely.
And especially we're going to be looking at why it's a better option than something like Minikube for resource-constrained environments.
Yeah, especially when you don't have a lot of memory.
Yeah.
So maybe we should start with VPSs.
Yeah, good idea. So for anyone who doesn't know, a VPS is like renting a computer in the cloud.
Yeah, it's always on, ready for your projects.
Right. And then, so Docker Compose is a tool that helps you define and run multi-container Docker applications.
Right, so if you have like a web server or a database, you can manage all those in Docker Compose.
Okay, so you can have lots of different parts to your project.
Yeah,
And Docker Compose helps manage all of that.
exactly.
Kind of like an orchestra conductor.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure everything's working together
Yeah.
in harmony.
Yeah, so this Medium article we have by Tamer Ben David dives into a lot of the benefits.
Oh, cool.
One of those is simplified deployment.
Oh, yeah. He talks about Docker Compose up.
Yeah, just one command and everything starts up.
Oh, wow. So it builds the images and starts the container.
Yep, and sets up the networking between them.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it saves so much time.
So I just need to spin up a VPS, install Docker Compose, and then I can run one command,
Yeah, pretty much.
and my whole project's up and running.
And then another great benefit is portability.
Oh, yeah, portability. So the same Docker Compose.yl file, which is basically your project's blueprint, can work across different environments.
So if you test locally and then you want to go to production on your VPS, it'll work the same.
Oh, that's really nice. I've definitely had problems in the past where something works on my computer,
Yeah,
but it doesn't work on the server.
for sure. And then something else to consider is security.
Oh, yeah, that's important on a VPS.
So Docker Compose provides something called resource isolation.
Okay, what is that?
So each container operates in its own little sandbox.
Okay.
So it prevents conflicts with other processes running on your VPS.
So my application's not going to break something else that's running as a server.
Exactly. And if you're on a shared hosting environment, that can be really important.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about scaling? Let's say my side project takes off,
Oh, wow. Congrats.
and I need to handle a lot more users.
All right.
Can Docker Compose handle that?
Yeah, so it might not be as advanced as Kubernetes,
Yeah.
but you can definitely handle basic scaling needs with Docker Compose.
Okay.
You can just adjust some parameters in your dockercompose.iml file.
Okay, so I can change how many instances of a service are running.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. That's probably enough for most side projects.
For sure, especially in the early stages.
Right. And you mentioned Minikube earlier.
Yeah.
Can you explain why Docker Compose is more efficient than that?
Yeah, so Minikube runs an entire Kubernetes cluster
Oh, wow. Okay.
inside a virtual machine on your computer.
So that sounds like it's using a lot of resources.
Yeah, you got the virtual machine itself and all the Kubernetes stuff that needs to run.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then you run your containers inside of all of that.
Oh, so there's like a lot of overhead.
Exactly. It's very resource intensive.
Whereas Docker Compose just runs directly on my VPS.
Yeah, exactly. So it cuts out all those extra layers.
Okay, so it's much more lightweight,
Yeah,
perfect for VPSs.
exactly.
So this Tunger Ben David article lays out a 6-step process for deploying with Docker Compose on a VPS.
It's a great article.
Do you mind if we walk through those steps?
Yeah, let's do it.
Great, we'll get to that in part 2 of this deep dive. Welcome back, everyone. So let's jump right into those 6 steps for deploying with Docker Compose.
All right, step 1.
Choosing a VPS provider.
Yeah, there are a ton of great options out there.
Yeah, like DigitalOcean, Linode.
AWS, Google Cloud.
Yeah.
So many choices.
So what are some things to consider when choosing a provider?
Well, it really depends on what you need in your budget.
Okay.
Some providers are really easy to use. Others offer like more power and flexibility.
Okay, so like you get what you pay for.
Yeah, kind of.
So after we've chosen a provider, then we need to set up the VPS itself.
Right, you got to create an instance.
Okay, and that's like a virtual server within their platform.
Yeah, and you'll need to pick an operating system.
Okay, and what's a popular choice for that?
Ubuntu server is a good one.
Okay, and then you'll probably want to set up SSH access.
Right, so you can connect to your VPS securely.
So that we can run all the commands that we need to.
Exactly.
Okay, so the VPS is all set up. What's the next step?
All right, now we got to install Docker and Docker Compose.
And that's usually pretty easy.
Yeah, most providers have like a one-click install or just a couple of commands.
That's nice.
Yeah, the article even has some examples.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so we have Docker and Docker Compose installed. What's next?
Now's the fun part.
Oh, fun.
Creating your dockercompose.ilml file.
Oh, okay, so this is where we define all the different services that make up our application.
Right, like the web server, the database.
Yeah, and how they all connect.
Exactly, you're laying out the blueprint for your whole project.
Yeah, and this article includes an example, dockercompose.ynl file, and a Docker file, to get you started.
Yeah, that's super helpful.
So the Docker file is like the recipe for building our application's environment.
Right, so it specifies like the base operating system image,
Okay.
what dependencies you need to install, and how to actually start your application.
So I'm seeing how all these pieces fit together. The Docker file builds the image, and then the docker compose.ynl file defines how all the containers
Yeah,
work together.
exactly.
Okay, so once we have those two files ready, then we can build and run our application on the VPS.
Right, you SSH into your VPS,
Yeah.
navigate to your project directory,
Okay.
and then run docker compose up a mymdfd.
Okay, and that nifd flag, what does that do?
That means detached mode,
Okay.
so it'll keep running in the background even if you close your terminal.
Oh, okay, so it's just going to run forever
Yeah, pretty much.
until we tell it to stop.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the moment of truth, we could access our application.
Go to your web browser, type in your VPS's IP address,
Yeah, or the domain name.
and boom,
There it is. Our app's live.
it's alive.
That's amazing. It really is that easy.
Yeah, Docker Compose is so powerful.
Yeah, especially for somebody like me who doesn't really want to mess around with server configurations.
Yeah, you can just focus on building your project.
Exactly. So the article also gives us some tips and best practices to optimize our setup.
Yeah, let's talk about those.
Okay, so first up is security.
Right, you can use a .env file.
Okay, and that's where we're going to store sensitive information
Yeah, like database passwords or API keys.
so that it's not in our main configuration files.
Exactly.
Good idea. And then next up is image optimization.
Right, so we want to make our images as small as possible.
Right, lightweight.
Exactly, and we can use something called multi-stage builds.
Okay, and what's that?
So basically, you build your application in stages,
Okay.
and you only keep the essential parts in the final image.
Oh, so it's like packing for a trip. You don't need to bring your whole wardrobe.
Exactly.
It's just what you're going to wear.
And then what about logging?
Oh, yeah, logging's important.
So you can see what's happening with your application.
If something goes wrong.
Exactly, you can track down any bugs.
Okay, great. And then there's also monitoring.
Right, so we can use tools like Prometheus and Grafana.
Okay, and what do those do?
So Prometheus collects data about your application's performance,
Okay.
and then Grafana visualizes that data in nice dashboards.
Oh, cool, so we can see what's going on.
Yeah, you can spot problems before they become big issues.
Oh, nice. And then the last tip is to keep our Docker images up to date.
Right, that's important for security.
Yeah.
And you also get any performance improvements.
Okay, so we got security, image optimization, logging, monitoring, and keeping everything up to date.
That's a lot.
That is a lot, but it seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah, Docker Compose really is great for side projects.
Yeah, and I'm really curious to hear how it compares to Minikube for this specific use case.
Let's talk about that in part 3.
Okay, sounds good. Welcome back, everyone. So we've been talking about all the benefits of Docker Compose,
Yeah.
but how does it really compare to Minikube when it comes to side projects?
Okay, so remember how we talked about Beaterhead with Minikube?
Yeah, you were saying it's like running a marathon carrying a bunch of extra weight.
Yeah,
Since
exactly.
it runs a whole Kubernetes cluster.
Right, you got the virtual machine, then the Kubernetes control plane, and then your containers all running inside that.
Yeah, so that's a lot of layers.
It is, and that uses up a lot of resources.
And resources are precious on a VPS.
Exactly, you're usually paying for every little bit of RAM and CPU.
Right, yeah. So Docker Compose just cuts out all those extra layers.
Yeah, it runs directly on your VPS.
So it's much more efficient.
Way more efficient.
Okay, so Minikube's not bad. It's just not the right tool for this job.
Right, it's a great tool for learning Kubernetes.
Yeah.
You know, it gives you a safe environment to experiment.
Yeah, I've used it for that before.
Yeah, but for deploying like simple side projects, Docker Compose is so much easier.
It uses fewer resources.
Exactly.
So for someone like me, just getting started with side projects, Docker Compose is the way to go.
Yeah, for sure. It's a great balance of power and simplicity.
Yeah, you get all the benefits of containerization without having to manage a Kubernetes cluster.
Exactly.
I'll be honest, I was a little intimidated by Docker at first.
Yeah, I get that.
But Docker Compose actually seems pretty easy to use.
It is. The dockercompose.yml file is really easy to understand.
Yeah, it is.
And the commands are pretty intuitive.
Yeah, I was looking at them and I was like, oh, okay, this makes sense.
Yeah, you don't need to be a Docker expert to use Docker Compose.
Yeah, I definitely don't consider myself an expert.
And Tomer's article has some great resources.
Oh, yeah.
He links to the Docker Compose documentation and best practices for Docker and your VPS provider.
Perfect. Well, this has been a really great deep dive.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah, and I feel a lot more confident about using Docker Compose now.
Yeah, you should.
I think I'm going to try it out for my next side project.
Awesome.
Yeah, so anyone listening, we hope you feel the same way.
Yeah.
Docker Compose is a really powerful tool, and it can make managing your side projects so much easier.
And you can focus on building cool stuff.
Exactly. So thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And we'll catch you next time.